A millionaire laughed at his brother, who had only inherited a lame ox from their father. 1 year later, everyone was left speechless. In a small, rural town, where the scent of damp earth and fresh grass permeated the air, Jack Thompson stood in front of the dilapidated shack he had just inherited. His deep brown eyes scanned the cracked walls and the roof on the verge of collapse, while his mind tried to process the events of the past. Few days, just a week ago, Mr. George Thompson, his father, had suddenly passed away due to a heart attack. The news had shaken the entire family, but especially Jack, who had always maintained a close relationship with his father. Mr. Thompson was known in the town for his generosity and passion for agriculture, having built a modest agricultural empire over the years. On the day of the will reading, Jack had attended with a heavy heart, more due to the loss of his father than the expectation of receiving anything material. However, nothing had prepared him for what was to come. To my eldest son, Richard Thompson, I leave the main estate, the cultivable lands, and 70% of my savings, the notary had read in a monotonous voice Jack had seen his brother Richard flash a smile of satisfaction, barely disguised by a gesture of false sadness. To my younger son, Jack Thompson, the notary continued, I leave the old shack on the outskirts of town, along with the ox chuck and the remaining 30% of my savings. A deathly silence had invaded the room. Jack, stunned, couldn't believe what he had just heard. A run-down shack and an ox? Was that his entire inheritance? For a moment he thought it was a bad joke, but the notary's serious expression and his mother's compassionate gaze confirmed that this was real. Now, standing in front of his inheritance, Jack felt a mix of emotions churning in his stomach. Disappointment, sadness, disbelief, and above all, a sense of injustice that burned inside him. Why had his father made this decision? Didn't he love him as much as Richard? A deep moo pulled him from his thoughts. A few meters away, tied to an old wooden post, was Chuck, the ox that was also part of his inheritance. The animal, with its brown coat and large, calm eyes, looked at him curiously. Jack slowly approached the ox, extending his hand to pat its muzzle. "Well, buddy," he murmured, "looks like we're in this together." At that moment, the sound of an approaching vehicle caught his attention. An old Jeep stopped near the shack, and from it emerged Sarah and Mike, his best friends since childhood. Sarah, with her chestnut hair tied in a messy ponytail and her green eyes shining with concern, quickly approached Jack. "How are you?" she asked, putting a supportive hand on his shoulder. Mike, tall and sturdy, with a face weathered by fieldwork, joined them, examining the shack with a critical eye. "What a mess," he commented. Whistling under his breath, Jack let out a bitter laugh. "Welcome to my new home," he said sarcastically. Sarah frowned. "I can't believe your father did this. I always thought he loved you and Richard equally." "I don't understand it either," Jack replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "What am I supposed to do with this?" Mike, who had been inspecting the structure of the shack, turned to them with a determined smile. "Well, it's clear, isn't it? We're going to fix it up." Jack looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "Fix it up, Mike. This is about to fall to pieces." "Exactly," Mike replied without losing his enthusiasm. "It means it can only get better. Think about it, Jack. You have the opportunity to build something of your own from scratch." Sarah nodded, infected by Mike's optimism. "He's right. Besides, you're not alone. We'll help you." Jack looked at his friends, feeling a small ray of hope breaking through in his heart. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the disaster it seemed to be. "All right," he finally said with a small smile. "Where do we start?" The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Jack, Sarah, and Mike worked tirelessly to clean up the land around the shack, remove debris, and assess which parts of the structure could be salvaged. Meanwhile, in town, rumors about the Thompson brothers' inheritance spread like wildfire. Many commented on how unfair Mr. Thompson had been in blatantly favoring Richard, while others speculated about the hidden motives the deceased might have had for making such a decision. Richard, for his part, didn't waste time showing off his new fortune. He bought a latest model sports car and began frequenting the most exclusive places in the nearby city. When he crossed paths with Jack in town, He barely greeted him with a distant gesture, as if the new difference in their economic situations had created a chasm between them. One afternoon, while Jack and his friends were resting after a long day of work, Sarah mentioned something that had been on her mind. "You know, I've been thinking, what if your father had some reason for leaving you this particular shack?" Jack looked at her, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "Well, knowing Mr. Thompson, I don't think he made this decision lightly. Maybe there's something here that we're not seeing." Mike nodded thoughtfully. "Sarah's right. Your father was always a clever man. Perhaps we should investigate a bit more about the history of this place." Jack felt a spark of curiosity ignite within him. What if his friends were right? What if there was more to this inheritance than met the eye? "All right," he finally said. "Tomorrow we'll start digging maybe. We'll find some answers." What Jack didn't know was that this decision would lead him down a path full of surprising discoveries, family secrets, and unexpected twists that would change his life forever. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jack looked at Chuck, the ox grazing peacefully near the shack. For some reason, he felt that the animal held more secrets than he could imagine. "We're going to figure out what's going on here, buddy," he murmured, stroking Chuck's back. "And something tells me you're going to be an important piece in all of, this." With those words, the first chapter of this story came to an end, leaving Jack and his friends on the brink of a discovery that would change their lives forever. Dawn arrived with a gentle breeze that swayed the leaves of the trees near the shack. Jack woke up early, his mind full of questions and a renewed determination. Sarah and Mike's words from the day before resonated in his head, fueling his curiosity about the possible secrets his inheritance might be hiding. After a quick breakfast, Jack met with his friends to begin the investigation. They decided to start with the shack itself, examining every corner in search of clues or hidden elements that could shed light on Mr. Thompson's intentions. While Sarah checked the old furniture that was still standing, Mike dedicated himself to inspecting the walls for secret compartments. Jack, for his part, focused on the floor, looking for loose boards or areas that seemed different. After hours of fruitless search, discouragement began to take hold of the group. It was then that Chuck, the ox, began to moo insistently from outside the shack. "What's wrong with that animal?" Mike asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Jack went out to see what was happening. Chuck was restless, scratching the ground with his hooves near an old oak tree that stood majestically a few meters from the shack. Intrigued, Jack approached the tree. He noticed that the earth around its roots seemed to have been recently disturbed. With his heart beating fast, he began to dig with his hands. "Sarah, Mike, come see this," he shouted excitedly. His friends ran to his side and together they continued digging. Soon, their fingers touched something hard and metallic. Carefully, they extracted a small metal box, rusted by time but still intact. With trembling hands, Jack opened the box inside. They found a yellowed envelope and an old leather diary. The envelope was addressed to Jack, written in Mr. Thompson's unmistakable handwriting. Jack opened the envelope and began to read aloud. "Dear Jack, if you're reading this, it means you found the treasure I hid for you. I know my decision to leave you the shack, and Chuck must have seemed unfair to you. But there are reasons I couldn't reveal in the official will. The truth, my son, is that you are not my biological son. Your mother and I adopted you when you were a baby, but we loved you as our own from the first moment. Your real father was my best friend, who died along with his wife in a tragic accident. This shack belonged to your biological parents. I kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment to tell you the truth. In the diary that accompanies this letter, you'll find the complete story of your origins. But there's something else you should know. You have a biological brother, someone who has been closer to you than you imagine. That brother is Mike. I know this revelation will change your life, but I trust you'll handle it with the strength and integrity you've always shown. I love you, son. Never doubt it, George." A sepulchral silence fell over the group. Jack reread the letter over and over, unable to fully process what he had just discovered. Sarah, with tears in her eyes, put a hand on his shoulder in support. Mike, for his part, was as pale as a ghost. No, it can't be," Mike stammered. "I'm your brother?" Jack looked up at Mike, seeing his lifelong friend in a completely new light. Suddenly, small details he had never noticed before made sense. The same eye color, the similar shape of their smiles, even some gestures they shared. "Mike," Jack began, not really knowing what to say. Before he could continue, Mike turned around and ran off, disappearing among the trees. "Mike, wait!" Sarah shouted, but it was too late. Jack remained motionless, holding the letter and the diary, feeling that the world he knew was crumbling around him. His mind was a whirlwind of questions. How had they kept this secret for so long? What else didn't he know about his own life? Sarah approached him and hugged him tightly. "I'm here for you, Jack," she whispered. "We're going to get through this together." Jack nodded silently, grateful for his friend's presence. He looked in the direction where Mike had disappeared, knowing that sooner or later they would have to face this new reality. "We have to find Mike," he finally said. "We need to talk about this." Sarah agreed, and together they began to plan how to approach this delicate situation. Meanwhile, Jack couldn't stop thinking about the diary he had yet to open. What other secrets did those pages hold? As the sun began to set, painting the sky in reddish hues, Jack and Sarah returned to the shack Mike still hadn't come back, and worry was reflected on their faces. "I'll give him time," Jack said, more to himself than to Sarah. "This isn't easy for any of us." That night, sitting by the dim light of an oil lamp, Jack began to read the diary of his biological parents. Each page revealed a story of love, sacrifice, and tragedy that deeply moved him. He discovered that his parents had been researchers, working on a revolutionary project related to bovine genetics. As he progressed in his reading, Jack began to understand why Mr. Thompson had left him. Chuck, the ox. He wasn't a common animal. He was the result of years of research and genetic experimentation. With each revelation, Jack felt he was getting closer to an even greater truth, one that could change not only his life, but that of many people. However, he also knew that this knowledge would bring new challenges and responsibilities. As he closed the diary in the early hours of the morning, Jack looked out the window towards the stable where Chuck rested. The ox, which until recently had seemed like a burden, now represented an invaluable legacy. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions for Jack, as he tried to process the truth about his origins and the hidden meaning of his inheritance. He also dealt with Mike's absence, who seemed to have vanished from the town. Sarah remained an unwavering pillar of support, helping Jack continue with the restoration of the shack while they looked for clues about Mike's whereabouts. The relationship between them grew even closer during this period of uncertainty, and Jack began to see Sarah in a different light, appreciating her strength and compassion in a way he had never noticed before. One morning, as Jack reviewed his biological parents' diary for the umpteenth time, a detail caught his attention. There was a reference to a secret laboratory hidden somewhere on the property. Excited by this new discovery, he shared the information with Sarah. "A secret laboratory? That would explain a lot of things," Sarah said, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Do you have any idea where it could be?" Jack shook his head. "The diary doesn't give an exact location, but it mentions that it's where water whispers secrets to the wind." Sarah frowned thoughtfully. "Sounds like a riddle. Is there a stream or fountain nearby?" "Not that I know of, but—" Jack paused, an idea forming in his mind. "Wait, I remember that my father, Mr. Thompson, used to talk about a hidden spring on the property. He said it was his secret place to think." With renewed enthusiasm, Jack and Sarah began to explore the property, looking for any sign of running water. After hours of fruitless searching, when they were about to give up, they heard a faint but unmistakable sound, the murmur of water. Following the sound, they came to a rock wall covered with moss and vines. Upon closer examination, they discovered a small opening through which a trickle of crystal-clear water flowed. "Do you think this is it?" Sarah asked excitedly. Jack nodded, his heart pounding. "There's only one way to find out." Carefully, they began to clear away the vegetation, revealing a hidden metal door in the rock. After several attempts, they managed to open it, revealing a dark passage that led into the earth. Armed with flashlights, Jack and Sarah ventured into the tunnel. The air was fresh and humid, and the sound of water accompanied them as they advanced. After a few minutes of walking, the tunnel widened, giving way to a large chamber illuminated by dim lights that, activated with their presence before them, stretched a fully equipped laboratory, although covered by a thin layer of dust that evidenced years of abandonment. Shelves full of books and documents covered the walls, and in the center of the room were several workstations with sophisticated equipment. "I can't believe it," Jack whispered in awe. "All this time, this was here." Sarah approached one of the tables, examining the papers scattered over it. "Jack, look at this," she said, holding up a folder. "Their research on bovine genetics. It seems your parents were working on something revolutionary." Jack took the folder and began to leaf through it. The formulas and diagrams were complex, but he could understand enough to realize the magnitude of what he held in his hands. "They were developing a way to improve the resistance and quality of cattle," he explained, his voice filled with wonder. "And from what I see here, they succeeded. Chuck must be the result of this research." The realization hit them both like a wave. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson's decision to leave Jack the shack and Chuck took on new meaning. It wasn't an insignificant inheritance, it was a scientific legacy of incalculable value. As they continued exploring the laboratory, discovering more details about the work of Jack's biological parents, they heard a noise coming from the tunnel entrance. Alarmed, they turned to see a familiar figure emerging from the shadows. "Mike!" Jack exclaimed, surprised indeed. It was Mike who was approaching them, with an expression that was a mixture of shame and determination on his face. "I've been looking for you," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I'm sorry for running away like that. I needed time to process everything." Jack approached his newly discovered brother, not knowing exactly what to say or do. The silence between them was charged with unexpressed emotions. Finally, Mike spoke. "I've been investigating on my own. I talked to my mother, our biological mother. She confirmed everything. We're brothers, Jack." The words hung in the air for a moment before Jack stepped forward and, without hesitation, hugged Mike. Years of friendship merged with this new fraternal bond, creating an even deeper connection between them. Sarah watched the scene with tears in her eyes, happy to see her friends reconciled and united by this new bond. "We have a lot to talk about," Jack said, separating from the hug but keeping a hand on Mike's shoulder. "And I think you've arrived just in time to be part of something incredible." As Jack and Sarah brought Mike up to speed on their discoveries, the three friends, now family, felt they were on the verge of something big. The legacy they had discovered would not only change their lives, but had the potential to impact the entire world. However, with this knowledge also came great responsibility. How would they handle this information? Who else knew about the work of Jack and Mike's parents? And more importantly, how would this affect their relationship with Richard and the rest of the Thompson family? As the sun began to set outside the secret laboratory, Jack, Mike, and Sarah looked at each other, aware that they were about to embark on an adventure that would change their lives forever. With determination in their eyes, they began to plan their next move, knowing that the road ahead would be full of challenges, but also incredible possibilities. The following days were a whirlwind of activity in the old shack, now converted into Jack, Mike, and Sarah's operations center. The discovery of the secret laboratory and the truth about their origins had awakened in them a fierce determination to continue the work of their biological parents. Jack immersed himself in studying the documents found in the laboratory, spending long hours deciphering genetic formulas and theories. His mind, always eager for knowledge, absorbed information at a dizzying rate. Mike, for his part, dedicated himself to restoring and putting the laboratory equipment into operation, taking advantage of his technical skills. Sarah, with her keen intuition and organizational abilities, became the glue that held the team together. In addition to helping with the research, she made sure the brothers didn't neglect their health amid their scientific enthusiasm. As they delved deeper into the research, it became clear that their parents' work was truly revolutionary. They had managed to develop a technique to significantly improve disease resistance and meat quality in cattle, all without resorting to artificial genetic modifications. "It's incredible," Jack commented one night as they reviewed their findings. "Our parents found a way to enhance the best natural characteristics of cattle. If this were applied on a large scale, it could revolutionize the livestock industry." Mike nodded, equally impressed. "And not just that, think about the implications for global food security. More resistant cattle means fewer losses due to diseases, which could help feed more people." Sarah, who had been listening attentively, added, "But we also have to be cautious. Information like this in the wrong hands could be dangerous." The three exchanged worried looks, aware of the responsibility that weighed on their shoulders. In the midst of their immersion in the research, they had almost forgotten about the catalyst of it all, Chuck the ox. It was during an afternoon while Jack was bringing him fresh water that he noticed something unusual about the animal. Chuck, normally calm and somewhat lazy, seemed more vigorous and alert. His coat shone with unusual health for an animal his age, and his eyes had a gleam of intelligence that Jack hadn't noticed before. Intrigued, Jack decided to conduct some tests. With Mike and Sarah's help, they took blood and tissue samples from Chuck, bringing them to the laboratory for analysis. The results left them open-mouthed. "I can't believe it," Jack murmured, reviewing the data over and over again. "Chuck's DNA is unique. It shows signs of the genetic improvements our parents were working on, but it goes beyond that. It's as if he had continued evolving on his own." Mike leaned over the microscope, fascinated. "Look at this. His cells show an unprecedented regenerative capacity. This could explain why he seems younger and healthier than he should be at his age." Sarah, who had been reviewing Chuck's veterinary records, added, "According to this, Chuck should be at least 15 years old, but his physical condition is that of a bull in its prime." The revelation about Chuck added a new dimension to their research. Not only did they have the theory and data from their parents, but a living and evolving example of their work. However, with this exciting discovery also came new challenges. Keeping Chuck's true nature a secret became crucial. If someone discovered his real value, they could lose him, and with him, a fundamental piece of their research. Meanwhile, in town, rumors about Jack's activities in the old shack began to circulate. People noticed the constant comings and goings, the lights on until late at night, and the sudden closeness between Jack and Mike, who previously barely spoke to each other. Richard, Jack's brother, also began to show a renewed interest in the property he had initially despised. He made frequent visits, trying to find out what was happening. One afternoon, while Jack was working in the stable with Chuck, Richard appeared without warning. "Well, well," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Looks like you've adapted well to your inheritance, wow, Jack." Tensed, aware of the need to keep his secret, "Yes, it turns out there's more value here than I initially thought." Richard narrowed his eyes. "That ox looks pretty healthy for being so old," he commented, approaching to examine him more closely. Jack felt his heart race. "Yeah, well, I've been taking good care of him." Richard didn't seem convinced, his gaze alternating between Jack and Chuck. "There's something you're not telling me, little brother, and I'm going to find out what it is." With those threatening words, Richard left, leaving Jack with a feeling of unease. It was clear that they needed to be even more careful in the future. That night, Jack shared the encounter with Mike and Sarah. The three agreed that it was time to accelerate their research and consider how to better protect their discovery. "Maybe it's time to seek outside help," Sarah suggested. "Someone with experience in the field who can validate our findings and help us protect them." Jack nodded slowly. "You're right, but who can we trust?" Mike, who had been thoughtful, suddenly looked up. "I think I know someone. My genetics professor at the university is brilliant and has an impeccable reputation. We could contact him." The idea of involving someone else was both exciting and terrifying. It meant taking a step towards legitimizing their work, but it also involved risks. As they discussed the pros and cons, a thought crossed Jack's mind. What if this research was the reason his biological parents had died? They were about to open a Pandora's box. With these questions swirling in their minds, the trio prepared to take the next step in their scientific adventure, unaware that they were about to unleash a series of events that would change not only their lives, but potentially the future of global agriculture. As the night progressed, the full moon bathed the shack and stable in its silvery light. In his corral, Chuck raised his head towards the night sky, his eyes shining with an intelligence that went beyond what anyone could imagine. In a simple ox, the animal seemed to sense that great changes were coming, and somehow he was ready to play his part in the story that was about to unfold. The decision to contact Mike's genetics professor, Dr. Ethan Walker, marked a turning point in the investigation. After ensuring that Dr. Walker signed a confidentiality agreement, they invited him to the property to present their findings. On the day of Dr. Walker's visit, the tension was palpable in the air. Jack, Mike, and Sarah had spent days preparing a detailed presentation of their research, making sure to have all the evidence and data meticulously organized. When Dr. Walker arrived, a middle-aged man with bright, curious eyes behind his glasses, the first thing he did was examine Chuck. His expression went from curiosity to amazement in a matter of minutes. "Extraordinary," he murmured, feeling the animal's back. "I've never seen a specimen like this. His muscle structure, his vitality. It's as if he had discovered the fountain of bovine youth." Jack smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. "That's just the beginning, Dr. Walker. Wait until you see what we've discovered in the laboratory." The following hours were a whirlwind of scientific explanations, data analysis, and passionate discussions. Dr. Walker listened attentively, asking incisive questions, taking notes frantically. At the end of the presentation, the scientist took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes, visibly impacted. "Young people, what you have here is revolutionary," he said. "You haven't just managed to improve the genetic quality of cattle, you've discovered a method that could have applications beyond livestock. We're talking about possible advances in regenerative medicine, longevity. The implications are enormous." Dr. Walker's validation was like a breath of fresh air for the team. Finally, someone from the scientific world recognized the importance of their work. "What do you suggest we do now, Doctor?" Sarah asked, eager to know the next steps. Dr. Walker took a moment before responding. "We must proceed with caution. This type of discovery will attract a lot of attention, not all of it welcome. I suggest we prepare a paper for publication in a prestigious scientific journal. But before that, we must legally protect your research." Mike nodded thoughtfully. "You mean patents?" "Exactly, Dr. Walker." "Confirmed. I would also recommend seeking backing from a reputable institution. It could help you get a grant to continue your research in a better-equipped environment." Jack felt a pang of apprehension at the idea of abandoning the shack and the secret laboratory. This place, which he had initially considered a burden, now felt like his home and the heart of their project. "What about Chuck?" he asked, looking towards the stable, where the ox rested. Dr. Walker smiled understandingly. "Chuck is the key piece to all of this. We'll need to conduct more tests, but with proper care, I suggest that for now, he remain here where he's safe and in his familiar environment." As they discussed the details of how to proceed, a noise outside the shack alerted them. Jack peered out the window and saw a familiar car speeding away. "It was Richard," he said with a frown. "I think he's been spying on us." "We must act quickly," Dr. Walker urged. "Prepare all your data and samples. We'll take them to a safe place first thing tomorrow." That night, as he frantically packed years of research, Jack couldn't help but feel they were on the verge of something big, but also dangerous. The excitement of scientific discovery mixed with fear of the unknown. Sarah, noticing his concern, approached and took his hand. "We're in this together, Jack. Whatever happens, we'll face it as a team." Jack looked at her gratefully for her constant presence and support. At that moment, he realized that his feelings for Sarah had evolved beyond friendship. But before he could say anything, Mike interrupted them. "Guys, you have to see this," he said, holding an old notebook he had found among their parents' papers. "I think I discovered why our parents died." Jack's heart skipped a beat. They were about to discover the truth about the tragic fate of their biological parents. As Mike began to read the contents of the notebook, a series of loud knocks on the door startled them. Richard's voice resonated from outside. "Jack, I know you're in there, open the door right now." The four looked at each other, aware that the moment they had feared so much had arrived. How would they protect their discovery? And what secrets would the notebook reveal about their parents' past? With his heart pounding, Jack approached the door, preparing to face his brother and whatever fate had in store for him. With a deep sigh, Jack opened the door, confronting a visibly agitated and angry Richard. "What the hell is going on here?" Richard demanded, pushing Jack aside to enter the shack. His eyes scanned the room, stopping on the boxes full of documents and laboratory equipment. "What is all this? And who is he?" he asked, pointing at Dr. Walker. Jack tried to keep calm. "Richard, let me introduce you to Dr. Ethan Walker. He's a geneticist who's helping us with a research project." Richard let out a sarcastic laugh. "Research? In this rundown shack? Don't take me for a fool. Jack, I've been hearing rumors in town and now I see they're true. You're plotting something big, aren't you?" Before Jack could respond, Mike stepped forward. "Richard, what we're doing here is important. It could change many people's lives for the better." Richard looked at Mike with contempt. "And since when are you two so close? There's something you're not telling me." Sarah, sensing the growing tension, tried to mediate. "Richard, please, if you give us a chance to explain." "I don't want explanations," Richard shouted. "I want the truth. What's in this shack that's worth so much? And why did Dad leave it to you, Jack, instead of me?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jack looked at Mike, then at Sarah, and finally at Dr. Walker. With an almost imperceptible nod, they all seemed to agree that the time for truth had come. "Richard," Jack began, his voice trembling slightly, "there's something you need to know, something that will change everything we believe about our family." Over the next hour, Jack revealed the whole truth to Richard. His adoption, the true identity of his biological parents, the discovery of the secret laboratory, and the importance of Chuck in their research. Richard listened in silence, his expression going from disbelief to shock, and finally to a mixture of pain and confusion. "Why?" Richard finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why did Dad never tell me?" Jack approached his brother, putting a hand on his shoulder. "I think he was trying to protect us both. And maybe he hoped we would discover the truth together, as a family." Richard collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. "All this time, I thought Dad favored you, that he didn't trust me to handle the family inheritance. But in reality, he was preserving the legacy of your real parents." As Richard processed the information, Mike remembered the notebook he had found. "There's more," he said, opening the old diary. "I think this explains what really happened to our parents." Everyone gathered around Mike as he read, aloud. The notebook revealed that Jack and Mike's biological parents had discovered that a powerful agricultural corporation was conducting dangerous and illegal genetic experiments on cattle. They had been about to expose the truth when they suffered the accident that cost them their lives. "It wasn't an accident," Jack said, his voice full of emotion. They were silenced. Dr. Walker, who had been listening attentively, intervened. "This explains why it's so crucial that we protect this research. We're not just talking about a scientific breakthrough, but about exposing a conspiracy that has been hidden for years." Richard, who had remained silent, stood up. "I want to help," he said with determination. "I've been a selfish idiot all this time, but now I see how important this is. It's bigger than any of us." Jack looked at his brother with surprise and gratitude. "Are you sure? It could be dangerous." Richard nodded. "We're family, Jack. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, and family supports each other." With Richard on board, the team felt stronger than ever. They spent the rest of the night planning their next steps, how to protect their research, how to expose the corrupt corporation, and how to honor the legacy of Jack and Mike's parents. As dawn approached, Jack went out to the stable to check on Chuck. The ox looked at him with his intelligent eyes, as if he understood the magnitude of what was to come. "We're about to change the world, buddy," Jack said, stroking Chuck's back. And it all started with you. As the sun rose on the horizon, illuminating the old shack and the surrounding fields, Jack felt a mixture of excitement and determination. The road ahead would be difficult, full of challenges and dangers, but also of infinite possibilities. With his newly discovered and expanded family by his side, Jack knew they were prepared to face whatever came. The truth about their past had given them the strength to forge a new future, one that could change the world for the better. As he returned to the shack, where the others were waiting to begin their new adventure, Jack remembered the words of his adoptive father in the letter. "I trust you'll handle it, with the strength and integrity you've always shown." And so, with a heart full of hope and determination, Jack prepared to honor the legacy of both families, the one that raised him and the one that gave him life. The future was uncertain, but he was ready to face it, knowing that each challenge would bring them one step closer to the truth and to a better world.